Alright, boys and girls, we got STAM SORC build for you today. Now, this is completely different to my last one. That was a more damage-orientated build. This is a way more tanky build that we didn't really give up a whole lot of damage for. So just keep that in mind. You may think that the damage difference between this build and my previous build would be huge, and it really just isn't. Our burst is obviously down a little bit, but our pressure and our sustained damage is about the same because we have a lot greater uptime on our bollards. So I'll kind of get into and explain why we have that higher uptime on bollards, but we are, as I've already stated, running bollards the same as last time. These are both medium pieces, so we're running 5 medium, 2 heavy. Now, you can, if you can't afford all the prior jewelry or whatever, you could run 3 heavy. I wouldn't recommend going over 3 though. And ideally try and stay at 2 heavy and 5 medium. So they're both reinforced, and then we're running well fitted on the rest of our body pieces, and we're running triglyphs on all our body pieces. This is super expensive, and I understand if you guys can't afford it, but at least try and get your large pieces triglyphed out, and then just work slowly on getting the rest. STAM SORC, it's a little bit more important because our all 3 stats are kind of very important. And, you know, our STAM's obviously important. We're STAM build. Our magic's important because a dark deal and ball of lightning and also crit surge all use magic. So, and then with health, this build is kind of dependent on you having 30 plus K health, in my opinion. Because a lot of this stuff scales when you get lower health. So the more health you have a bigger window for all your passives and gear sets to kind of do their job. That's person preference. That's up to you if you want to run under that. We are up to 33k on our back bar, and that's kind of where I think you should be with this build personally, but obviously that's up to you. And then we're running prior jewelry, 2 infused, 1 swift. Now, I may be going a second swift. I haven't quite made my mind up. But these are all weapon damage. So our sustain is really good without any enchants. And yeah, so up to you. If you'd want to run 2 swift, that's perfectly fine. If you want to run all infused, that's also good. I just think STAM SORC, speed on STAM SORC is very important. And our speed is good. It's just when we don't get an expedition proc from our digit trickery, we are not necessarily the fastest. So that's why I'm contemplating going a second swift piece. So then our third set is digit trickery. Now, for those that don't know what it does, it gives you a line of health, stam, and magic. So as I said, we use all 3 resources, so that's nice. And then when you deal damage, you gain 1 of 5 major buffs for 21 seconds every 9 seconds. The eligible buffs are Expedition, Protection, Mending, Heroism, and Vitality. So all very good major buffs. So we are stacking quite a few majors and minors on this build, and that kind of starts to add up pretty quickly. And that's where we're getting our bigger uptime on our bollards as well through heroism. It's a really alt gen monster. So yeah, learning to play around whichever buffs you have is a really good thing to get in the habit of doing. I'm still kind of working on it myself, but you know, you get mending and protection, or, you know, protection and vitality. You know you're going to be really tanky, you're going to have really strong healing power, so you can kind of take a few more risks and go offensive in that window. You get heroism, you know you're getting crazy ult regen, so maybe hold off 10-15 seconds until heroism runs out, so you can just build that ult up. Obviously, if you already have 500 ult, it doesn't matter. But just keep that in mind, and then, you know, if you have expedition proc, you know you can kite, so if you're trying to pick a time between maybe swapping locations, maybe you want to move to another rock or another tower or whatever it may be, waiting till you get that expedition might be something to keep your mind, keep aware of. So then our last and final set is Master Sword and Shield. We don't have the Perfected one yet, but the Perfected adds 4% healing, which will be nice, and we will be looking at getting it. But for those that don't know, this is when you use Puncher, you heal for X amount, and then you gain spell and physical resistance equal to the amount of healing healing or overhealing done for 5 seconds. The healing scales off your max health. So another reason why you want a decent amount of max health as well. So if you don't have Master Shield, you can use potatoes. You can pick up potatoes very cheap at the moment, and that just gives you a flat 3%. This is kind of going to be better than potatoes in just about any scenario, but not game-breaking better. So don't feel like you're missing out on a whole lot if you are running potatoes, but I do recommend getting the perfected version of this is probably a noticeable difference with that 4% healing on top. So if you can get the Master Perfected Sword and Shield, then you'll be laughing. But anyway, that's the guy. God damn, it is 7:30 in the morning. I haven't gone to bed yet, so cut me some slack. But that's the gear, guys. Let's have a look at our stats. I'll bring up our front bar stats, buffed, and our sword and board buffed stats, and we'll have a quick look and squiz at those. Okay, let's have a look at our buff stats. So, on our front bar, we're at about 1,000, almost 1,100 magic recovery. So, this is with a tripod. Without a tripod, we're about 800. And then, obviously, when we're using our crit pots, our crit is up around 32%. I kind of swap between the two in combat, depending on, if I need the more sustain, or if it's a fight where I'm going more offensive, I'll use crit pots. So that's up to you which one you want to do, or if you want to do similar thing to me and combine them in combat. And then obviously health recovery is not really a stat we want to worry about. And then stam recovery, we're at 2,335. So really solid stam recovery on this. If you're not trying to 1vx, you probably don't need this much amount of stam recovery. And if you're American, you probably don't need this much stam recovery. But I'm an Aussie that likes to solo, and getting heavies off aren't always reliable. So that's why we run a bit higher stam recovery. And then we're at 16,000 magic, max magic. Now this goes down 1,000 on our front bar. This goes, down 1,000 on our back bar because we lose our 4th piece of Deidre Trickery. Then we're at 32,700 health and just over 26k stamina. I know that kind of might put some people off, but it's really not something to worry about. I don't be concerned about it. And then our weapon damage is 6,009, almost 6,900. And as I said about our weapon critical, if we're running crit pots, we're at 32, but without them, we're at 16. And then our penetration is 12,100. As I said before, if I did or didn't, I can't remember if I actually did. But you could run sharpened on the sword. It will give you slightly more damage, but you will lose healing power. So that's up to you whether you want to have the bit of extra damage over the healing power. That's completely up to you. Just something to think about when you do build your build out. And then where our resistances are reasonably low on our back bar, they go up quite a lot on our front bar, but we're at almost 26k. Obviously this scales with prior, and also goes up a lot when we're on our back bar. And I'm pretty sure that's without Master Sword and Board procced. So on our back bar, we are basically the only real different stats to kind of look at on our back bar is our resistances, and we're at nearly 31k resistances. Now, I don't have a defending sword at the moment, so this will go up another 1500, so we'll be at about 32.5k resistances on our back bar when we get that defending sword. It's charged at the moment. And then our crit resist is pretty low, it's 1400, but we're stacking so much damage mitigation and percentage mitigation that it doesn't seem to be that big of an issue. So that's our stats. We're running obviously 14, as you can see, into health, and then 50 points into stamina. You can play around with this and adjust this yourself if you want a little bit more stam or a little bit more health. If you're worried about having 26k stam, you can put it all into stam. Completely up to you, but personally the health is more valuable on this build than the bit extra stamina you will get from it. So yeah, that's the stats, boys and girls. We'll move on to the skills. Alright, so let's dismiss this. Alright, let's start on our front bar. So we're running bowl. Now our bar setup is very similar to our last build, if anyone's seen that. So you could probably skip this almost if you did. We're running bowl on our front bar. Now this is primarily, so if I'm in a fight, getting pressured heavily, I can just hit ball and it's really lagging. I can just hit ball and then I can get my buffs up and that kind of stuff. That's why it's on my front bar. If you want it on your back bar, you can do it that way too. That's completely fine. Then we're running rally. This gives us our minor stam recovery buff and gives us our burst heal, really solid skill. And then we're running crystallized weapon. Now, most of you guys will, can I get stuff to work, please? Most of you will understand what this does. Basically, when you activate it, it will make your heavy attacks and light attacks hit for a fuck ton more, basically. And then we're running D-Swing. Now this is kind of our spammable and is our gateway to our stun. So we're basically setting off balance with this and then stunning with a medium attack. Most people are pretty common with that, but if you're not, something that might take a little bit of practice to get used to. And I'm pretty sure off balance lasts for 8 seconds. I could be wrong about that, but it's a big window either way. You know, you've got a decent amount of time to get the medium off on them. And, you know, if you're fighting a Nightblade, you'll probably get the dizzing on them and they'll set them off balance. Then they'll dodge roll and then you'll get the medium after they come out of the dodge roll. So you just got to get used to the timing. And play around with it, and you know, depending on what the person's like, when you're fighting, you might go the medium straight after the diz swing, or you might just have to wait off. And then Executioner, pretty self-explanatory. It's our execute. Once they're below 50%, it starts scaling up to 400% more damage. Generally, you don't want to start using this to about 35% health. If it's someone really squishy, then, you know, once they get under 50, you can probably drop an execute. But I get in the habit of not starting to execute once they're below, you know, till they're below 35, 40%, around that area. The scaling starts to kick in pretty well around that area. And then our front bar ult is Dawnbreaker. This is our burst. It's really good if you're fighting multiple targets and they've got a healer, so you can get a stun on multiple targets at once and get some damage into them. Got a really good dot on it as well. It's just a really good ult in general when it lands. We all know it's not the easiest thing to get a DB to land in CODL sometimes. So, and then, wow, yeah, that just took 3 seconds for me to bar swap. So there's that. And then on our back bar, practically the same as well. We're running Hurricane. I went to say Boundless. There's the Mag SORC coming out in me, isn't it? This is a nice little dot and also gives us our major resistance buff, so almost gives us 6k physical and speed, and it also gives us our minor momentum speed, so a minor expedition. So we get 15% speed from this. So obviously when we're stacking that with our Swift, with our Orc, and when we get Major Expedition from Daedra Trickery, we are super fast. Then Resolving Vigor, this is our heal over time. Not much to say about it. We all know Vigor. And then Dark Deal, pretty self-explanatory. Well, we're exchanging magic for stamina. And we're also getting a decent heal from this. As I said in the last video, you kind of want to try and get line of sight before you use this, or bowl, and then you get a Dark Deal off, because it can be interrupted. So just keep that in mind. And the heal's good, but it's not going to save you when you're face tanking. You can't just sit there and eat the damage while you cast it. So, and then we're running Pierce Armor. Oh, damn it, I still don't have this level. So this is what's proccing our Master Sword and Board, and this is a penetration beast. So it's giving us 9k pen. As you've seen earlier, when we're fully buffed, we have almost 13k as it is. So with this, we're getting 22k penetration without sharpen. So with sharpened, if you were to go that way, you would be at 25k pen, which, to be honest, is kinda over pen in a lot of situations. Obviously, tanks with Pry, you're still going to be fine, but a lot of light armor builds aren't going to have over 20k resistances. So just keep that in mind. And you'll also lose healing power if you go sharpened over Nern. And then we're running Crit Surge. Now, I'm still contemplating about this skill because of our crit. If you don't want to run crit pots, I wouldn't be running Crit Surge. That's kind of just the way it is. At 15%, it's just kind of not worth it. It's a really good heal if it is proccing every second. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want to run crit pots, consider swapping this out for something else. And then our back bar ult is Temporal Guard. Now, two reasons we use this is, one, because we do get major protection from Daedra Trickery. Stacking major and minor gives us 15%. So really solid percentage mitigation there. But the second is the ability to just kite on this build. You know, you can bowl a few times and you're going to drag everyone out. They're going to chase you, and then you can bowl back to where you was. If you're in a tower, you can kind of jump off the tower, hope that they all jump off or some jump off after you, and then you can bowl back up. And also, if you do get popped really hard, say you're fighting and Nightblade comes out and just drops you super low, then you can hit undo as well and get you kind of a reset as such. Keep in mind, it is a very buggy skill. It has its issues. It can have lag going off. Then you can just end up dead when you come out of your undo as well. That's happened to me. You can get snared in undo if you go past, say, a DK that's spamming root or something like that. And then you can literally just get stuck in undo. You can come out of it and just be stuck. I've been going back and forth from an undo and just been stuck in it forever. So just keep in mind that it's a buggy skill. And without the minor protection, we wouldn't be using it. If you don't want to use it, Sword and Board ult is another good option for you. Alright, so let's talk about some of our other little housekeeping things. So we are running the Serpent. This gives us a 310 stam recovery. By pure stats, this is kind of the best Munda Stone, like hands down, unless you're playing a gank build or something where you want the damage. But this is kind of stat wise better than running weapon damage or so on. Just gives you more. And then, as I said earlier, we are a Orc. So we are getting that nice movement speed in sprint. And, you know, weapon damage, you know, it's all good stuff. My second choice would probably be Nord. If Nord or Imperial would be my two second choices. So if you didn't want to go Orc, I would go Nord or Imperial. But, you know, the game's kind of moved away from races being game breaking, so you can kind of get around it in most scenarios, no matter what race you are. Trying to think. Oh, food. We are running takeaway broth. Now this gives us max health recovery, max stamina recovery, and max stam, if I didn't already say that. So, I know on our last build we were running BLACKWOOD Sugar Skulls. Kind of lost its punch when health recovery got nerfed, and I know, obviously, this has health recovery as well. But, basically, between BLACKWOOD Sugar Skulls and Takeaway Broth, we're just giving up some max stat for some recovery. Now, you can run Lava Foot if you want to go that way, but I kind of found that it didn't work into this build that well for me. I was just I had too much resources, basically. I had too much stamina recovery, and there was no really way of giving up anything else, because I didn't want to give up my Mundus. If I did that, I would be too low again. So this takeaway broth gives you 1300 more max stat than Lava Foot. So you're giving up, 140 recovery for a 1.3k max stat. Highly recommend getting yourself some Purifying Bloody Mary and also some Corrupting Blood Mary, because you're going to have to... it's just the easiest way of keeping stage 3 vamp. I didn't mention that before, but stage 3 vamp is where you want to be. Now, I have been thinking about running stage 4 vamp, and potentially that in that scenario you could go Lava Foot. Because the sprint to stealth passive seems kind of very interesting on Stamina SORC. On most classes, I don't think it's that great, because people can just pull you out very easily and not allow you to get into stealth. But on Stam SORC, you can bowl and then you can sprint. You're kind of covered by your bowl and you can get into stealth. So if you want to run stage 4, that's something to consider. I might play around with it at some point as well. But that's basically the build. We'll have a quick look at CP. Don't want to get into it too much, because I think CP is kind of a personal preference, but these are the ones that I'm running. I'm running increased damage done with damage over time effects, and we're running, actually, we probably swapped that. I thought I swapped that out. Anyway, we're running increased damage done with single target attacks, increased damage done with direct damage attacks, and reduce the damage taken by single target attacks. Yeah, I thought I took that out. So we'll swap this out for something. It's a good thing I actually had a look in here. I think that's just a mistake, but I'll let you guys know in stream what I swap it out for. And then in Juggernaut, we're running while under the effects of crowd control immunity, you take 2% or 10% less damage. The way that CC break is at the moment, this is just really handy, because you will be stuck in CC a lot. And then this is a sustained monster. Really, you should be running this on every build. It's kind of just that one of those CPs that you have to run on every build. It's 5 instincts, so while you're affected by a status effect, your core combat skills cost 25% less. So you're basically going to be affected by a status effect all the time when you're outnumbered. If you're fighting a handful of people, you're going to have a status effect on you. And for those that don't know, your core skills are things like blocking, dodge rolling, CC break, all that kind of stuff. And then we're running Stam, Magic, and Health Recovery. This is 150. We may end swapping this out as well at some point, because I was running this before I made some changes. And then we're running Max Health as well. As I said, I think Max Health on this build is pretty important. And to be honest, if I could squeeze a little bit out, I wouldn't even hesitate running 34, 35k. The more health you have, it just gives you a bigger window for your prior and all that stuff to kick in. So, quick explanation of kind of how this all comes together for those that may not understand. So, prior obviously is giving you a lot of resistance when you get lower and lower and lower. So, on this build, we're at 42k resistances, around that when we start to get down into the 20% health. So we have a lot of resistances, and then we're stacking things like minor and major protection, and then we're also getting 30% less damage taken through the vamp skill line. So with that, where are we? Vamp. Reduce the damage taken up to 30% based on your missing health. So when you start to get lower and lower on this build, this passive starts kicking in. So you can see, initially we're still tanky. Like, we still have a decent amount of resistance, and we're stacking, minor and major protection and stuff like that. But the more and more we get lower and lower, the tankier we get. So you really can just have time to recover. I had a 1v3 yesterday, and I was below 30% health for like 2 minutes, and I ended up winning the fight, and they just couldn't execute me. Just because we're so goddamn tanky down low. So that's kind of like how everything comes together. Our Master Sword and Board is kind of just this, like, we're running Daedric Trickery on the front bar. There's just not a better back bar set at the moment after they nerfed Potatoes. If Potatoes was still 5%, I'd be running that, but it's just not. So that's why we're running Master. As I said, if you can get Perfected version, then you are sweet. There's not really much to this. It's a pretty generic, like, offense rotation. You dig, swing, crystallized into your medium stun, and then you DB. It's very generic. There's nothing really to keep an eye out. Just try and make sure you keep your puncher up, and your Master Sword and Board is 5 seconds. So you want to keep that in mind when you're using that, and also keep in mind that you're only running Daedric Trickery on the front bar, so you want to try and keep that ticking over. So you see, like, I'm running my buff timers here, so I can kind of see when it's getting down to about 2/3, and I know I need to get to my front bar to get that next Daedric Trickery buff. Now, if you didn't have Master Sword and Board, you could run Daedric Trickery on both bars, so you're consistently always going to get those procs. You're obviously going to give up 3% mitigation. It might not sound like a whole lot, but it is something. But, if you don't want to have to worry about that, especially at the start of learning to play this build, you can do this. I was playing around with it the first few hours I was playing this build. But, once you get a little bit better at it, it's not hard. It's just every 9 seconds you have to do damage on your front bar. You got Hurricane up, so it's not really that hard. But yeah, that's the build, boys and girls. This is the first time I've kind of felt mildly happy about this patch. I felt like I can actually solo on this to a certain degree. Obviously, it's not last patch. I never expected to find a build that would make it like last patch. But I've had a lot more fun in the last 2 days than I have in the whole last 2 weeks. So it's a really solid build. I want to thank Incap for helping me with the build and suggesting to run Daedric Trickery. So a big thank you to that sexy man. And I will catch you next time, boys and girls. If you have any more questions, feel free to join my streams. I'll have it linked in the description. I stream 5 or 6 days a week. So don't hesitate to jump in and ask me any questions. Or if you want to make changes to the build and you're not sure if it will work or not and you want an opinion, once again, feel free to jump in and ask away. Alright, boys and girls, I'll see you next time. Peace.